So, how's your day going?
Really busy.
I can imagine. I can
Yes.
imagine. Okay, so are you ready to get started?
Okay.
All right. So, if you're elected sheriff of San Bernardino County, what will you do to clean up the escalating problem of gangs and drugs?
Well, um, like I've said before, gang problems, they're a local problem. And I've got some general strategies for preventing gangs. One is to start preventing youth from joining gangs. Um, Two would be transforming the existing gangs into neighborhood clubs. Three would be mediating and intervening in conflicts between gangs, such and also having prevention programs that are going to integrate school curriculums with after-school recreational activities. Um, you know, to me, that seems to hold a lot of promise from preventing gang crime and violence. Now, also utilizing these methods, I also want to combine a long-term proactive investigations into the entire gang, um, unit up there, and also with short-term investigations and prosecute individual gang members. So if you do this, you go the long-term route, you're looking really deep into the gangs, but in that short-term investigation, you're looking at the real troublemakers from just the surface. And we want to get the individual gang members that are, either the real deep ones or the ones that are just right on the surface of doing things. But then we also want to work with the local groups so that we can understand problems and develop relationships in the areas of counties that smitten with gangs. And when I'm talking about local groups, these are shareholders, stakeholders in the community, and they want something done. So the sheriff's department really needs to get in there, work hard to meet with these people, make sure we're answering their questions, but finding out what they're doing, because you can continue going through and arresting people and doing none of this other stuff, and it's putting a Band-Aid on a place that needs a tourniquet. You're arresting people. You're not looking into really the core problem, and that is actually getting down to what's going on in the community. And, we're going to have to continue having aggressive gang sweeps in gang areas, and that's to deter new gangs from coming into the areas. But when you use all of these aspects, and the concept is proven to lower gangs and criminal areas and areas that are high crime. There's studies done on this, and there's actual successes in areas of Chicago, LA, New York, where we used to just go in and arrest people. Well, you arrest people, people fill in behind them. So you got to work in using all of these strategies to make it work, and I believe we can.
Okay. Okay. So, my next question is, what's your thoughts on the anti-gun legislation we've all been witnessing coming out of Sacramento lately?
Well, I absolutely disagree with any kind of anti-gun legislation. I am a pro Second Amendment sheriff's candidate. I'm a pro Second Amendment person without being a candidate. I believe that the Second Amendment gives us the right to defend ourselves from the tyranny of the federal government. And what does that mean? To me, it means if this federal government owns a, M16, we should be able to own a bazooka. I mean, really, that was the whole reasoning behind the Second Amendment. But the federal government is overstepping their bounds, and now we have the state government, coming in and doing the same thing. I truly believe it's wrong, and I want to make sure that if the feds come in and want to take guns, I will interpose as a sheriff, and I have that right to do. I'm a constitutionally elected officer, and to protect the rights of the citizens and defend the Constitution, I will do that. I'll call my deputies, I'll call my militias, I'll call the posses, and we will not allow this to happen. And, there'll be a dialogue between the federal government and me regarding this. And someone was asking a question, since we're on the Second Amendment, about I think it's called the DROA, and the basically there's a register of people's names in the state government, and it says that these people are mentally ill and they also own guns. And this is one reason we should never have to register guns, because now you have a list of people that register guns, and now you have a list of people that someone said they're mentally ill, and the state will send state Bureau of Justice people or someone, Department of Justice people from the state of California to take people's guns that's on this list. And some of the sheriffs, especially the one that's appointed, had thought about actually going out and doing this himself until we got involved and challenged him on this. But what I will do, and someone was saying on one of the on some news show or one of the blogs that a sheriff has no business getting involved, and I'm sorry, I will be involved, because again, it's involving local citizens. They cannot get a search warrant off of those mentally ill lists because they're very subjective. Who said they're mentally ill? And if they can't get a search warrant, they have no business messing with the public in San Bernardino County. And if these people come over and ask for your guns, call the sheriff. We'll come over and ask them to leave if you feel threatened by them, because they try to intimidate you into giving the guns. They'll tell you, well, you illegally own the guns now because we feel you're mentally ill and you should be giving the guns up. So that needs to stop. The Attorney General, she's definitely wrong. She's definitely wrong, and she needs to stop.
So you would definitely stand on the side of citizens versus the state if it came down to it?
When it comes to that, yes, absolutely, because I will interpose between anyone that's coming here trying to take our guns and they're violating the Constitution. And that's what the sheriff's supposed to do.
Okay. Now, what's your thoughts on the FDA guidelines of controlled substance and abuse? Many departments are using that as their handbook nowadays. And the FDA specifically states pseudoephed as a disqualifying factor for citizens' right to own firearms. What's your thoughts on using those types of guidelines?
Well, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think what's going on now is you've got people in elected office that do not want anyone to own firearms except police and military. They want the government to own firearms. There's no reason that someone that takes pseudoephed shouldn't be able to own a firearm. There's people under all kind of medication that own firearms. And what they're doing is they're taking specific medication that a lot of people use for general allergies and things like that and saying they shouldn't be able to use them. I disagree with that. How do we work around that? That's another question. We have to see when we come up with that problem where they don't want to issue or allow people to carry firearms that are using pseudoephed. We really need to look at that. Same thing with the mentally ill issue and issuing a carry concealed weapon permit. Just because someone says you're mentally ill, that's very subjective. We need to have someone look at that and say, well, when were you mentally ill? If you're still mentally ill, I'm not issuing a carry concealed weapon.
On a case-by-case basis instead
yes,
of a broad brush.
Yeah, don't tell me because someone's name ended up on some state registrar's, list that we're going to not issue, because that's ridiculous. That's, again, we've got too many people out here that have they have a agenda, and it's to take weapons away from citizens that truly is not their business. We have a U.S. Constitution and we have a state constitution, and we need to abide by that.
Yes. Okay. Now, with the recent federal rulings on concealed carry, showing that good cause was indeed acceptable for protection of life, do you plan on upholding that ruling and expanding on concealed carry permits within the county for law-abiding citizens?
Well, when the Ninth Circuit made that decision, they actually agreed with me. What I want to do is there's really 4 steps the state wants you to do. They want to make sure that someone's of good character. They did want a reason. So, good character, that's very simple. A very quick background. We don't need to go and talk to your neighbors, your boss. You don't, taking a year and a half to get a carry concealed weapon permit is ridiculous. When we look at this, you come in with your paperwork filled out, you sit down, someone runs the quick background that I could do from an actual police car if I had to. And if there's, if there's a red flag, then maybe we do need to go out and talk to some people. But if it's just a clear background, you would be interviewed there, and then go through the rest of the process. But it shouldn't. The biggest part is that. Is the background, what takes so long. And I know you have to send the information to the feds and get a return on that. But if we do all of this right when you come in and make sure that it's going out, and we're not, delaying it and hoping that maybe you'll decide to drop out. And that's what used to happen. They'd call you up and say, are you really still interested in getting this? I read a statement that John McMahon made, and he said that, it's really for people to be carrying, a firearm for personal safety. It's really a big deal, is what he said. And I agree with him, but again, it's really not his concern as long as they meet the criteria. It's a Second Amendment issue. It's not John McMahon's issue, even though right now he is the appointed sheriff. I disagree with that. And so I will be issuing carry concealed weapon permits to people that are not mentally ill and they're not felons. And that's it. You live in this county.
Looking at streamlining the process as well.
Yeah, we want to streamline it. We want to make it quicker. I would like to see open carry come back too. People say, oh my God, if we get open carry, people are going to be shooting each other. There's going to be more crime. And again, it's not me saying this, but if you look at the statistical information that comes from the federal government, who really, they don't want you to have a firearm, but they're actually taking information and it's proving them wrong. It's showing that anywhere that has open carry, anywhere that has concealed carry, and they're really utilizing that, crime goes down. And you drive over to Arizona, I don't see people shooting each other. And you can go into a Walmart, gas station, you see people carrying a firearm on their hip. And that's just the way it needs to be. The Second Amendment gives us that, that opportunity. And some people say, well, that Second Amendment was for those old-timey days back then. No, it's not. The Second Amendment, I had a young lady tell me, well, the Second Amendment's up for negotiation. And I told her, the Constitution is not up for negotiation. There's a set, it's set this way. The Supreme Court has overstepped their bounds several times because they are now making laws. And the Supreme Court should have never had the power that they have. And the other sets of government should be pulling them in and stop this craziness of the Supreme Court making laws. We have the legislative branch that makes the laws. They make the laws, and the Supreme Court's gotten away with doing whatever and making these ridiculous rulings, and all of a sudden that's the law. So I think that the Second Amendment is alive and well, and a lot of people are changing the way that they do business by allowing people to get their carry concealed weapon permits, and it's changing. It's changing in a lot of states, and a lot of the judges are now looking at it and saying, "Wow, we've made a mistake." So, I agree with the Second Amendment. I want to make sure people in this county understand that it is for you to have the opportunity to protect yourself from the tyranny of the federal government. But if you want it for protection, God bless you. You can come get one.
Okay. Now, also, as concealed carry permits can easily run into 4-digit numbers, would you consider implementing an affordable program for those less fortunate so as to not outprice law-abiding citizens' rights to protect themselves?
Yes, I don't want the county to be out any money to pay for someone's carry concealed weapon permit because I'm all about saving the county money. And when I say the county, I'm talking about you. I don't want to spend your money for someone else, and I don't want to spend money foolishly. So what I'm looking at is there's positions of, let's say we have to have people in that office to, run these backgrounds. I'll hire private investigators, a lot cheaper than deputy sheriffs. If we have to have someone that runs the JDIC, the the computer that they're going to be running these backgrounds on. If we have to have a sworn person, we'll have a sworn person in there, but I want to do it as cheap as possible so we can cut down on the price. And the only thing I want you to pay for is what it's going to cost us. If it costs, you know, let's say it's $400 now, if the county's making any money off of that, then that needs to stop. All we want to do is be able to pay for the actual cost. And that's what I'll be looking forward to doing. And I don't like the restrictions on there of how many guns you can own either. So I think that we can take that off. But I do want you to be to train with your weapon too. I mean, that's just something I think that's important.
Okay. What's your thoughts on the recent trend in warrantless searches?
Well, warrantless searches, you know, as long as they're abiding by the Fourth Amendment, I have no problem with that. But if they're searching outside of the Fourth Amendment, I have a big problem with that. Okay.
So as long as it falls in line with having justifiable proof that's verified, then a search is, of course, acceptable.
Yeah, as long as they have probable cause to believe a crime has been committed, you know, it's if they're just going in your car to go in your car and they have no reason, then I have a problem with that. Or they're just walking into your house. You know, you can have a consensual encounter with a law enforcement officer or a peace officer, and if at any time you want to walk away, you can walk away. If he says, well, no, you can't, you need to ask the question, am I being detained or am I under arrest? If he says no, then you can walk away. But if he says yes, then you need to ask what for. And then, because that's where an investigation is starting. But sometimes on a consensual encounter, and I'll just tell you real quick, I've seen people behind like motels where I know is a lot of prostitution activity and gang activity. And I see people sitting in cars. I've walked up to the car before and said, hey, how's it going? And what's going on? And really, that's a consensual encounter. I don't know that they're committed. It could just be you and your husband sitting there, and you could say, hey, I'm sitting here with my husband, we're talking, that's it. Okay, thank you. But you start doing some bizarre stuff, and I had this one guy try to tell me that, you know, it was none of my business, and I was like, okay. I said, well, you know, ma'am, you know, what's your name? And she said her name, and I said, what's his name? And she didn't know the guy's name. So all of a sudden, now I have some kind of probable cause to start going, okay, you know, and then some of the things that were going on in the car led me to believe there was some type of criminal activity. But just people coming up and searching you with no probable cause, I have a big problem with that, you know.
And how do you feel about the militarization of our police force that's going on? And should you witness that occurring, is there anything you would plan to do to prevent such a shift in power?
Well, yes. First of all, there shouldn't, you know, posse comitatus and things of that nature. Is the military is not supposed to have any kind of jurisdiction over the civilian population, and the law enforcement in a lot of the areas. In some places out here are starting to look more like the Army than, you know, a sheriff's department or a police department. And the way I look at that is we need to make sure that we are peace officers serving our community, doing what we're paid to do. If we have to go into something dangerous, I don't mind having an armored vehicle with people with, you know, the flak jackets on. But if this is just an everyday deal where we're going to be driving these around to intimidate people, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm going to make sure that when we utilize this type of equipment, it's utilized for specific purposes. You know, these high-profile warrants where we have, you know, have to make entry on a place where the guy's supposed to be armed and dangerous. I'm not going to send a deputy in there with without the proper equipment. Now, do they need to look like they're in the Army? Well, I think the clothing they buy is specific for the duty they're doing, but once they're done, you know, if we don't need to be driving around looking like we're the military. So I don't want a militarized sheriff's department. We need to be working with the community. We're peace officers. We're there to de-escalate. We're not there to make people afraid, and we're there to serve people.
also you'd be looking at building the public relations of the police department back up and building the trust of the community and the department. Which
Yeah, well,
seems to be getting
exactly. When
lost.
you ask me about combating crime, that's if we don't have a relationship with the community, there's no way that we can bring the crime, the crime index down. We can't go out and do our job because no one's going to tell us what's going on. No one's going to say, you know what, that Billy down the street's the one's breaking in all the cars. If you don't have a relationship with people, they're not going to tell you because they're afraid of you. But if you have that relationship and, with your community groups, with people in your neighborhoods and where you're working, a lot of crimes are going to be solved, and crime will go down and people will feel better about their local department.
Okay. And should you come across a situation where it's alleged an officer has abused his or her power and been found guilty of doing such, how do you plan to handle that? Would you take appropriate actions, including removal of the officer and charges to be filed?
Well, if there's criminal activity involved, we will do, we'll have the administrative investigation. But if it's criminal, we're definitely going to investigate and do what's appropriate. I mean, if we have to arrest someone in any government agency, we will. If it's brought before us and we're able to, find out, yeah, this person did this, then we will file charges. There's absolutely.
Okay. And if an officer has been found harassing peaceful protesters, what action, if any, would be taken to ensure citizens' rights to safety and free speech?
Well, what we want to do is, sometimes there's a training issue, and what you're talking about is a training issue. If we have people that are on the street corner or they're out protesting and they're peaceful protesting, if they're out committing a crime, instead of just doing what, I have no problem with protesters. I protest, and I want to make sure that your First Amendment right is upheld. I don't want you having to go pay for a permit and sign a piece of paper saying you want your First Amendment rights. That right now is required in Rancho Cucamonga if you have over 75 people wanting to protest, and I totally disagree with that. And that's a law that we shouldn't be doing anything with except ignoring as a sheriff's department because it's a violation of the Constitution. What I want to do is if you're out there, we shouldn't even have to be out there unless someone's calling saying, hey, they're standing in the street, they're blocking traffic. That's a different story. Other than that, and if there's a deputy that is harassing the crowd, then that's a training issue. If he's doing anything that could, hitting the crowd, then that's a criminal issue. But if they're harassing, that would be, to me, would be a training issue because I don't want to just, start firing people or causing some kind of
animosities.
Well, not animosity, but I don't want to start taking, giving people days off for this stuff unless we've actually went through some kind of training program with them and said, hey, I don't know if you really understand this. This is a First Amendment right issue, and you allow them to have their free speech. If they're violating the law, we'll go out there and warn them, get out of the street unless it's something that we really have to take appropriate action on. But, to make sure, I want to ensure that you feel that you have the right to protest.
And other counties across the state and across the country are implementing POV cameras for their officers to ensure the safety of both officers and citizens while they're on duty. What's your thoughts on that, and is that something you would ever consider?
Well, that's part of my platform. For several years, I've looked into this, and when we started out this time, I mean, it's been a few years ago, I said that we are going to put lapel cameras on deputies working patrol, and I would extend that now to the jails. And the reason being is we do have a lot of frivolous lawsuits. I'm not going to lie to you about that, because people look at the county government as a cash cow, and what they'll do is they might get stopped and they might get ticked off and they might go to the local sheriff's station and say this happened. And a lot of times the agencies will make a contract with the person and say, look, you know what, we'll give you $1,000 if you don't sue us, if you'll sign this saying you won't sue us. And a lot of people will do that because they know this. It's a game. They've done it. They've had friends that have done it. And I want the frivolous lawsuits to stop. That camera will stop those. Now, let's say that it's a deputy and he's at a free speech, where you're having a First Amendment uh, gathering, and he is out there, like you said, harassing people. And you make a complaint. Well, we look at the video and see that he is harassing people. He's not violating the law. Well, there's a training issue. I'd like to deal with that and be able to show him what he's doing wrong. Now, third would be the criminal issue. If we have people saying that, the deputies did this or a deputy did that, just like we, right now that's going on at San Bernardino County Sheriff's, they're saying that the inmates in the jail were, beat up and all of the different things happening. If these deputies were wearing those lapel cameras, we would capture something. And if they were turned off or tampered with during those times, that would lead us to believe that there's a possibility this is true. But if we had the video from those cameras, can you imagine if this didn't happen, how vindicated these deputies would feel? Yeah. So I mean, now if it did happen and we have it on video, it's part of the prosecution now, and we will utilize that to prosecute. So I have always been for these cameras here in the last few years, and whenever I watched them put it on the peace officers at Rialto PD, and it cut back on the use of force and complaints by 85%. I said, right there you go. We pay, I think it's 20% of the county budget goes into, or out of our budget goes into litigation. And I think that if we can cut our litigation in half, can you imagine the money that we can save the taxpayers? So it's going to help. It's going to help the department be a better department and have a better deputy. A lot of deputies welcome this because they like to have that backup to vindicate them when someone comes in and says, I did this. And they're going, I didn't do it. And they're saying, well, I kind of believe you did it because, the passenger also said you did it. So you got two people. I just think it's a good deal. And I am absolutely for these cameras.
Okay. Well, I thank you for your time, and you've answered many questions that many constituents have across the county. And I hope to talk to you soon, and I hope that your campaign goes well.
Okay, and if anyone wants to go to sheriffhall2014.com, please go there. That's our website. It's got information about my biography. It's got videos on there. It shows a video endorsement by Sheriff Richard Mack. And it's got all kind of information. So I always ask people to go there, and if they want to donate to our campaign, they can go there too.
Okay.
Right.
I will put that on the link, so they will have
Thank
that
you so
information.
much.
All right.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Bye.